Chapter 681, A Good Heart Didn't Earn Good Rewards. How long had it been since the last time he saw Coral? It was probably in Japan, when he passed out after the fight with the collection of gods. Afterwards, he woke up in the Luhai Lane courtyard, and they had not met since. Sometimes, Lu Shu also admired Coral's courage for killing her way alone to the collection of gods with 2 statue knights in an attempt to avenge him. Back then, he saw the lack of fear for death in her eyes. In the past, he would have mocked cliché plots in typical romance dramas. Lu Shu did not believe that life or death situations, or deep feelings that transcended life, existed in reality. But after he bumped into the cultivation world, he realized that there really existed that person who were willing to wait for you eternally in the river of time and fate. He was selfish. He did not believe in feelings and emotions because he thought all of them would fade away with time. Some people were like an open book once others show them a tinge of affection. In fact, this was not frankness. It was loneliness. Was Lu Shu lonely? Not really, because he had Lu Xiaoyu. Although his life was full of distress, he did not tell her that he received complaints about the taste of his boiled eggs, the unsatisfactory amount of vinegar in the sauce he served, or the miserable moments when he realized his customer had fooled him with fake paper money. But Lu Xiaoyu knew it all. Lu Shu wanted to erase everything with time. Until then, he was not even sure whether Coral would still smile at him like she did in the past. But his duty to protect her was irrelevant to their feelings. He wanted to repay her, for she had once protected him, and carried him back to the collection of God's fortress to retrieve Lu Xiu's body even though she was badly wounded. From afar, Lu Xiu kept a pace with Coral's team towards the downtown area. Suddenly, he realized that Francesco's minions started to move too. They dispersed themselves and followed behind the deities, although they kept their distance. Acting like an ordinary tourist, Lu Shu eyed the roadside food stalls, but he never stopped walking. Sardinian food was rather unique. There was an abundance of seafood due to their proximity to the sea. The most special dish was roasted suckling pigs on iron sticks. However, despite the good reputation of European gastronomy, most Chinese people would still miss their home food after having a taste of the local cuisines. There were no high-rise buildings in the region, and the tallest architecture was only 4 stories in height. As Lu Shu followed the deities, he suddenly saw Coral looking in his direction. But she saw no one. Coral was confused. She did feel something, as if something warm was approaching her. Her actions drew the attention of a man behind her. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. I felt that I saw someone familiar," replied Coral. She shook her head calmly. Her face looked pale. She did not look to be in a healthy state. The man had seemingly become used to such remarks from her. He said casually, "You've suffered such a grave injury in the collection of gods, for him. Until now, the crack on your gungner can't even be repaired. But how about him? It's been so long, but has he shown any concern for you?" "Not even once." "I know, we have no right to interfere with your personal life because you are our leader, the leader of the deities. We simply feel he is unworthy of you." Walking forward, Coral said calmly, "It's okay. The top priority now is to obtain the world tree sample. We've already found a way to extract world tree energy and we have awakening fruits too. Besides, I'll be fine. I've never contacted him too, haven't I? You can take it as I did a good thing back then. Didn't Grandpa always tell us to have a good heart? A good thing? That's it? You've fooled yourself well. It's meaningless to have a good heart if it can't earn you good rewards," the man replied. He was Coral's cousin. Suddenly Coral's expression turned stern. "We do things not because of their consequences, but because we firmly believe that it's the right thing to do." That silenced everyone. In fact, Coral's personality had changed after she assumed the leadership role. She had to face the darkest side of the world and stand tall in the holy palace as the true leader of the deities. Maybe she was not good enough yet, but she was still trying. Her morals would be the guiding light of the future of the deities. Lu Shu stood still behind a building, far from Coral's team. He did not expect that Coral could sense his presence from so far away. She had not ascended to Class A, and she did not notice the presence of the Department of Faith Theory either. Yet, he could now be certain that the Department of Faith Theory had hidden plans here. They had been following the deities closely while the other organizations did not seem as interested. Lu Shu also noticed Coral's paleness, though he could not be sure across the distance. No matter what, he had made up his mind. He would not run away from the Department of Faith Theory. In any case, he could not stand the humiliation of being chased by Francesco for 3 hours and getting electrocuted, at the bottom of the sea for him too. Whether the bishop would be coming and how badly he was hurt by the saint remained unknown. The situation would be in favor of Lu Shu if both of them were unable to come to the island. On Sardinia, there were a total of 8 cities, which clearly showed the vast size of this island. The city that Lu Shu was in was situated at the southern tip of the island and it was called Villasimius. There were many churches here. Instead of a luxury hotel, Coral's 11-people team chose another quieter place for accommodation. At first, Lu Shu was surprised that Coral would lead such a frugal life given her incredible affluence, but later he realized that they had booked the entire 4-story building plus its courtyard. Lu Shu had to settle his own needs too. He had to find a hotel and have a good meal. As he was walking on the exotic street, he ran into 2 metahumans locked in confrontation. Both of them were burning with fire. Suddenly, a second-floor window was pulled open in a small house nearby. Hissing with anger, a gray-haired old lady threw a stick at one of the fire-type metahumans' head and roared in English, "Go somewhere else if you want to fight." Lu Shu was shocked. What? So this was how the native commoners treated metahumans? One of the metahumans looked up and replied, "Okay, Grandma." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Chapter 682, The Misunderstanding Has Been Solved. Lu Shu looked as the young man ceased all his activities and was stunned. This was strange and new to him. The metahumans overseas were indeed very different from the ones back home. There would not be such a surprising, yet somehow natural sight either. The young man was like a child that had fought with others. No matter how great his abilities were, his grandmother could still beat him with a stick without scruple. Lu Shu suddenly realized metahumans had parents as well. Some may oppose metahumans, but have children who were metahumans as well. Some people felt that metahumans and humans should be completely separated. But how? Everyone was related by blood. If you had undergone an awakening, would you lose your parents? That was not the case. In the past, Lu Shu had never thought about this, as he had no parents or relatives. He had Lu Xiaoyu by his side, but Lu Xiaoyu could train as well. An old lady's crude voice sounded from the second floor. "The apple pie is done. Come and eat." "Okay, Grandma," the young man answered. He turned around and said to the metahuman, "Tomorrow, let's go to a deserted place and try out that skill." "Sure. Then I will go home to eat as well." The metahuman walked away. As he walked away, he brushed past Lu Shu. He even smiled at Lu Shu. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. "So you were not fighting, but playing around?" This was like on Saint Seiya 1, where all the children in the orphanage shouted, "Look at my diamond dust too." Who cares? Lu Shu had thought that these 2 people were practitioners from a large organization who were going to fight it out. Something was wrong. In the past, he had thought that realm of cultivation would be incompatible with the rest of the world. But if blood ties still existed, these 2 worlds were inseparable. Night was approaching. Lu Shu found a small inn and walked in. He did not expect to see the handsome young man who was performing his water-type abilities that afternoon at the front desk. There were writings on his hands. Lu Shu glanced and saw that it was calculus. He asked in English, "Are there any rooms?" The young man looked at him and smiled. He said in broken English, "Yes, there is rooms." The young man's mother walked out from the storeroom. When she saw Lu Shu, her expression changed. She rambled, "Why did you follow my son here? His orientation is normal. Please leave." As she spoke, she pushed Lu Shu out. The young man behind the counter was shocked. Had he been stalked? And his orientation, what? Lu Shu helplessly stood outside the inn. What did I do wrong? What just happened? Other than seeing Coral, nothing has gone my way today? The young man blocked his mother and asked her about what had happened. Then, he said, "I think that there may be a misunderstanding. You used our local dialect to talk to him. But does he understand? I think it is a misunderstanding." He turned and spoke to Lu Shu in Catalan, "Do you understand me?" Lu Shu was silent. What should he do? He nodded politely and awkwardly. The young man's expression changed. Lu Shu felt that something was not right. He knew that the young man knew simple English. Thus, he asked in English, "What did you say just now?" When Lu Shu asked this question, the young man understood why Lu Shu had nodded awkwardly and politely. The two of them cleared things up. The misunderstanding had finally been solved. Lu Shu found out that the lady had thought that he was a gay who followed her son home. But Lu Shu felt that this was not the worst thing that could have happened. He was afraid that the lady had awakened something in her son. As Lu Shu went through the necessary procedures, he realized that there was something wrong with his money. He only had US dollars. But the lady took a look and said that it was fine. She could go to the mainland and convert the currency. It was quite convenient being in a tourist city. As he settled the procedures, Lu Shu felt a wave of energy coming from behind him. He did not move, as he was only an ordinary tourist. From the start, others could not sense Lu Shu's waves of energy. His waves of energy only emerged after he trained in the Hall of Swords. After all, it was very scary for his chi to turn into a sea of chi. But when he opened up his sea of chi, the hole in the sea of chi did not open up. Instead, it formed a world. This further prevented people from sensing his waves of energy. Thus, there was no problem in him acting as an ordinary tourist. Anyway, his appearance had never been exposed. 3 metahumans came to Lu Shu's side and asked the young man, "Do you have a room on the 4th floor?" The 4th floor was the highest floor of this small inn. Lu Shu had chosen this inn as the hotel Coral was staying in was visible from the rooftops. Lu Shu had never seen these 3 people, but he guessed that they were here to keep a lookout on Coral. Of course, he could not make an arbitrary judgment. After all, there were more and more medium and large organizations from Europe that had gathered here for the World Tree. Suddenly, a sturdy metahuman asked Lu Shu in Italian, "Are you here to travel?" Lu Shu shook his head and said in English, "Can you speak in English?" The metahuman repeated himself in English. Lu Shu smiled and replied in English, "Yup. I have no lessons, so I decided to travel." After one obtained a European visa, one could go anywhere they desired. Thus, university students who studied in Europe could travel to other countries if they had the financial means to do so. Lu Shu took the key and went up. This old-fashioned inn did not use a key card. Instead, they used a normal key to open the door. The room was very simple. It was somewhat damp as it was situated in a coastal town. After Lu Shu went up, the 3 people suddenly discussed softly. He does not seem like an ordinary tourist. If he was a tourist, Asian Americans would usually form groups to travel. Find out who he is. We cannot make any mistakes. Furthermore, it is too much of a coincidence that he chose this place. Could he just be an ordinary tourist? Someone asked in a small voice. No, said the sturdy metahuman. He cannot speak Italian, thus he is not a student here. It is not a weekend either. Students should be in school studying. Even if it was the weekend, they would not come to such a secluded place. His comrades thought that he had quite a bit of experience. The sturdy metahuman had gone to university, while the other two had not. Chapter 683, Black Hand. After a short discussion, the three metahumans decided to check on Lu's shoe. Their first clue was this inn. The sturdy metahuman asked the lady, "What did you talk about just now?" They asked her as they found out that Lu Shu was talking to the water-type metahuman and the lady when they walked in. The misunderstanding had just been solved, thus the water-type metahuman acted as a translator to ease the awkward atmosphere. When the metahumans asked the lady was very excited. She said in Italian, "Him? I met him at the beach. Today is the horse riding festival. My son is the captain of the cow cheerleading team. I went to support him." The lady patted her son's shoulders and said excitedly, "Isn't he handsome?" "Ha! Ha!" It is not easy to become the captain of the cow cheerleading team. You have to go through many rounds of selection. My son is also very good in his academics. He learned the content taught at university by himself. He is going to take the admission test for the University of Oxford. His English is very good too. I'm telling you, my son. The three metahumans were dumbfounded. Wait. What did I ask you just now? The lady suddenly realized. Ha! 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 Look at my memory. My son is 17 years old this year. Wait, don't talk. The sturdy metahuman stopped the lady. I was asking, what did you talk about with that young Asian American man? Oh. The lady suddenly remembered. Nothing. The three metahumans were ready to hit someone. I'm telling you, the three of us are metahumans, said the sturdy metahuman. So what? The lady had a look of disdain. My son is a metahuman as well. I'm telling you, I was so excited when he awakened. The sturdy metahuman was speechless. Why was it impossible to communicate with her? We are from the Black Hand, said the sturdy metahuman calmly. That young Asian American man. I met him on the beach. He was beside a tour group from China. Later on, I pulled him aside to talk to him. The lady explained what had happened honestly. There were good and evil metahumans, but to this lady, the Black Hand in Italy were definitely evil. They had done many things that caused widespread dissatisfaction, but recently their presence had weakened. It was said that their leader had been told off by a father of an ordinary person. The fact that her son was a metahuman made her strong-willed. In the past, there was a tree in their neighbor's yard that blocked the light from the second and third floor. The two parties argued for a long time, but after her son awakened, her neighbors silently hired people to cut the branches away. But she could not always be so strong-willed. She could not provoke the Black Hand. Where are his credentials when he checked in? The sturdy metahuman asked. We don't register credentials here, said the lady carefully. There were some places overseas where public security was not very strict. One could find cockroaches and cigarette butts in a hotel for over $1,000 per night. This kind of small inn on an island would not have any sort of internet connection either. The sturdy metahuman thought about it and said to the person beside him, bring Angelo over. See if that young man has any waves of energy. The person behind him rushed out. The sturdy metahuman turned and said to the lady, our conversation never happened. Do you understand? He was about to go up when the lady suddenly said, you still have not paid your deposit. The sturdy metahuman paused. I am from the Black Hand. The Black Hand has to pay for their room too. If not, I will call cartel, said the lady. The sturdy metahuman laughed as he took out his money. An organization like cartel would only dare to talk in Sardinia. The lady rummaged through the counter. Your change of $10. There were many twists in the conversation, but it was very harmonious. If Lu Shu were here, he would have been shocked. There were many practitioner organizations overseas. There were aggressive organizations, protective ones, neutral ones, and ones who liked to conduct research like a science interest group. There were all kinds of organizations. But at least Lu Shu knew that he had come to the right place. He had met so many metahumans in just one day. This was proof. This was like a game. If you realized that there was nothing wrong with the path you were walking along, then you had walked in the wrong direction. Furthermore, Coral was here. Lu Shu was certain that there were people here who intended to fight Coral. As for the sample of the fabled world tree, Lu Shu had a few awakening fruits on hand. He may be able to buy one. He stood in his room on level 4 and looked at the hotel where Coral was staying. He suddenly realized that Coral was sitting on the swing in the courtyard, seemingly deep in thought. When someone walked out of the hotel, Coral did not turn around, but she knew who it was. She straightened her back. Lu Shu did not know what Coral and the person were talking about. The person was holding a file. It seemed as if he was asking Coral something. After Coral spoke, the person noted it down and returned to the hotel. Lu Shu did not know what to feel. This scene made Lu Shu feel that Coral had too many responsibilities to bear. But there was nothing they could do. When she drew the Gungnir from her body and continued the Odin bloodline, she had become the master of gods in the deities. This may be a position that many could only dream of, but Lu Shu felt that this was rather cruel to Coral. But who could say for sure? Maybe Lu Shu just did not like authority and fame. Coral suddenly staggered. Her slender arms grabbed onto the rope of the swing to keep her balance. It happened quickly, but it ended quickly as well. After 2 seconds, Coral was back to normal. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. What happened to Coral? His impression of Coral was of a bright girl. How could a class be expert as strong as Coral stagger? But Lu Shu did not know that she would be affected by her bloodline no matter what. If it were an ordinary practitioner, they would fully recover from any injury in 2 months, unless it was an irreversible injury. The strength of the Gungnir was frightening. When she attacked in a fury, even a fake Class A like Takashima Tairatsu did not dare to take Coral, who had just advanced to Class B, on. But Coral's life and the world tree were connected. When the Gungnir was injured, she would be involved as well. But Lu Shu had never noticed Coral's moment of weakness. The white tree mark, which he did not know the function of, started to appear and vanish. But Lu Shu did not sense anything. After 2 seconds, the mark returned to its normal state. Chapter 684, Boldness of Execution stems from superb skill. Lu Shu did not know what exactly had happened to Coral, but her current state made him feel uneasy. Dong dong dong. Someone was knocking on the door. When he sensed the waves of energy from outside, he did not rush to open the door. A small, skinny and tanned middle-aged man stood outside the door. Lu Shu asked calmly, "Who are you looking for?" The person did not speak. He turned and left. Lu Shu watched him as he left. The person went down and said to the sturdy metahuman, "There are no waves of energy." Okay. The sturdy metahuman nodded his head. Angelo, thanks for your work. Typically, metahumans who could sense waves of energy held high positions within an organization. After all, such manpower was not common. Angelo nodded his head and went out. Since Lu Shu was just an ordinary tourist, the Black Hand decided that there was no need to be worried about him. Even if he had ulterior motives, an ordinary person was no cause for alarm. As the Black Hand went up to their rooms, another wave of people entered the inn. Lu Shu stood at the window and saw a group of people walking in. He wordlessly drew the curtains, leaving only a small gap. He had seen these people before, as they had accompanied Francesco in the past. He secretly opened the door, wanting to listen in on what was happening downstairs. The 3 members of the Black Hand had come up. They did not seem to recognize the Department of Faith Theory. Lu Shu concluded that these 3 people were not from the Department of Faith Theory. So this was the case. This was becoming more and more interesting. Were there so many organizations interested in coral? Did the organization that these 3 people belonged to want the Gungner as well? Lu Shu received a message from Yu Mingyu. Have you encountered the Italian Black Hand? They had just done a check on you, but their sensory-type metahuman determined that you were an ordinary person. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. The Black Hand. He had heard of this organization before. They were a medium-sized organization in Italy. Their leader was a Class B. He did not remember anything else about them. He did not take this organization to heart. But Yu Mingyu did not ask Lu Shu how he had blocked the waves of energy from his body. Nalan K had this ability as well. Furthermore, Lu Shu had entered many remains. It was normal to have this kind of ability. Lu Shu suddenly asked, I am looking over coral. I think the Black Hand wants to do so as well. Can you confirm this? Also, send some detailed information about the Black Hand to me. Lu Shu decided that he would do his research on this second-rate Italian organization. In less than 3 hours, Yu Mingyu sent Lu Shu the information just as night fell. There were no first-rate organizations in Italy. There was the Black Hand, and there was the cartel. The 2 organizations minded their own business. Their leaders were both Class B experts. As opposed to the Black Hand, the cartel was content to exercise sovereignty over Sardinia. They were fond of local activities. They were a rather pastoral organization. Lu Shu defined it as such. They were not fervent about protecting the peace. Every holiday, the metahumans from the organization would put up performances. This was the reason why the metahumans here were slightly unusual. It could not be considered as unusual either. Who said that metahumans had to fight battles? Lu Shu felt that this was quite good. When the Black Hand started to expand, conflict inevitably erupted between the Black Hand and the cartel. The leader of the Black Hand personally came to Sardinia to fight the cartel, but did not defeat them. Not only that, it was said that the leader of the Black Hand even broke one of his testicles during the battle. You could find records of this even in the hospital. Later on, he came to take revenge, but he did not emerge victorious. The matter was left unsettled. The leader of the Black Hand was a 27-year-old playboy called Patrick. He liked to fool around with celebrities on normal days. It was said that when he met Coral during a banquet, he was very shocked. He did not care about the difference in their abilities. He used his experience in picking up girls to chase after Coral. He even insisted that Coral marry him. Ever since then, he did not fool around with other girls, but he could never find the opportunity to get close to Coral. He had run to Sweden to find her, but Coral had gone to the deities. After her battle with the collection of gods, he was filled with admiration for her. A prodigal son returned home is worth more than gold. Lu Shu finally understood. So he was looking for a chance to get close to Coral. It was said that you had broken one of your testicles. And yet you still did not give up? The difference in power between the Black Hand and the deities was too big. Was he not afraid that he would provoke the deities and land his organization in trouble? Was this what they meant by, men with one testicle were bold? Lu Shu sent a message. Why didn't you tell me about this important information? Yu Mingyu seemed very surprised. Is it that important? Lu Shu looked out and saw a fleet of luxury cars outside the hotel where Coral was staying in. Their formation was very grand. Someone opened the door of a Bentley. A man in a white suit stepped out of the car. His hair was tied into a short braid. For some reason, Lu Shu felt like hitting him. A girl like Coral would definitely not like this kind of person. He was too boastful. What was he flaunting his wealth for? The deities were definitely richer. Lu Shu complained under his breath. As the man tried to walk into the hotel like no one else was present, 2 Earth-type metahumans suddenly blocked him. This was a sign that the deities were not seeing any guests today. Lu Shu felt that this was very interesting. The Earth-type metahumans had been keeping a lookout in secret. They were well concealed. Patrick, the leader of the Black Hand, probably did not think that he would not even be able to enter. But he did not make a big fuss. He took out a large box and passed it to the Earth-type metahumans. Afterwards, he entered his car and left. The 2 Earth-type metahumans took the large box into the hotel. Lu Shu did not know what was inside the box, but he was rather curious. He then saw the 2 Earth-type metahumans walk out again. They opened the large and intricate box and left it on the street. It was filled with countless roses. The 2 Earth-type metahumans started to give out roses to passers-by. They did not leave even a stalk behind. Lu Shu felt that this was an interesting way to deal with the roses. But he wanted to know what had happened to Coral, and whether there was anything that he could do to help. The members of the Department of Faith Theory walked to the 4th floor. Lu Shu heard them enter the room next to the one beside his room. This was interesting. A small and housed 3 groups of power, including himself. The Black Hand was in between Lu Shu and the Department of Faith Theory. Chapter 685 Threat. All the rooms in the small inn were standard rooms. There were 2 1.5-meter beds in the room. Lu Shu suddenly realized that no matter whether it was the room beside his, or the room beside that room, all 3 rooms were occupied by males. He hid behind the curtain and observed the hotel where Coral was staying at through the gap. But he did not see Coral come out. Lu Shu was waiting for something to happen. If the Black Hand had to conduct a background check on an ordinary Chinese tourist like him, Lu Shu did not believe that the Black Hand would not do the same for the members of the Department of Faith Theory. The Department of Faith Theory would conduct checks on the Black Hand as well. They had different aims in coming here. Conflict was sure to break out. At night, the members of the Black Hand went out. As Lu Shu tried to guess where they were going, they returned with 2 suckling pigs and bottles of alcohol. Lu Shu sighed. The characters of Italians were hard to explain in a few words. But he was now more relaxed. Earlier, he did not know anything. At least he had found a few clues to explain the current situation. If the bishop from the Department of Faith Theory did not appear, Lu Shu did not have to fear anyone on this island. Furthermore, no matter whether the Department of Faith Theory or the Black Hand conducted a check on him, they would only determine that he was an ordinary tourist. This uncertain environment was suitable for Lu Shu to walk through. He was about to go down to buy some food. As he walked out, the people from the Department of Faith Theory also walked out from their room. The person in the lead looked like he wanted to scare Lu Shu. He flashed a fake smile and asked in English, "Are you not afraid that something will happen to you when you're traveling alone? For example, breaking an arm or a leg?" Lu Shu was silent for 2 seconds. "I have private health insurance." The members of the Department of Faith Theory were dumbfounded. It was not as if they did not understand him. After all, private health insurance was common around the world. But even if you had private health insurance, could you afford to be so strong-willed? From Isaac Marino's Distress, plus 666. From. They had wanted to scare this tourist and chase him away. Under normal circumstances, tourists were more overly anxious outside. If they wanted to chase tourists away, all they had to do was to scare them. But they encountered one who had private health insurance. So what if you have private health insurance? The atmosphere was rather awkward. Isaac Marino suspected that there was something wrong with this young man in front of him. But Lu Shu was not joking. He did have health insurance. Every month, the Heavenly Network would compensate him for his insurance fees. He would definitely not be scared by the Department of Faith Theory. Lu Shu felt that even if the Department of Faith Theory wanted to clear the area around Coral, they should start with the Black Hand. The respective large organizations broke out into disputes 2 weeks before the auction. There may be 2 organizations who would engage in conflict, while Coral was unaware. But Lu Shu did not sympathize with either side. The Black Hand was not a good organization. As for the leader of the Black Hand, Patrick, he was too much. Before he confessed to the person he liked, he did not think from her perspective. Why did she have to suffer because of this dude? Lu Shu was slightly angry. Lu Shu did not care about this group of people and went out. When he brushed past them, Isaac grabbed his arm. Isaac said, "I hope that you have listened to my warning and not turn a deaf ear to it. Rebellious young men may be more daring, but this does not mean that you will be tolerated everywhere you go." When his arm was grabbed, Lu Shu was prepared to kill Isaac. He did not know whether the Department of Faith Theory would do a check on his identity. But there was no harm in being careful. If Isaac had only threatened him, he could calm down. He smiled calmly. "Thank you." Isaac let go of Lu Shu's arm and watched him walk down. He calmly said, "He does not seem like an ordinary tourist, but there are no waves of energy either. We should keep a lookout for him. Let's see if he is willing to move out." At this point, the cooperation between the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society had been severed. There was still no news from Howard. Francesco did not dare to confess that he had killed Howard. It was as if Howard had disappeared into thin air. Thus, the Phoenix Society was furious. The foundation of their cooperation crumbled. Furthermore, there was the conflict between the saint and the bishop. The Heavenly Network had the habit of seeking revenge over a small matter. There was a common understanding in the Department of Faith Theory that they could not easily antagonize others. If the Heavenly Network and the Phoenix Society worked together, the consequences would be too dreadful to even think about. Even though the Phoenix Society also wanted a situation where the first-rate organizations were equally matched, the Department of Faith Theory had to take a risk. Thus, before Isaac determined whether Lu Shu was from the Heavenly Network, he would not use force to deal with Lu Shu. Lu Shu walked down and saw the lady behind the counter. He said, "Why did you allocate 3 people to one room for the 2 rooms upstairs? Could they be, when I was walking down, I heard them praising that your son is very handsome." After the young man translated for the lady's expression changed. Lu Shu was just watching the situation unfold for fun. He interfered regardless of whether it would be of any use. What if a miracle happened? The lady thought for a while and suddenly asked, "You can't understand Italian, right?" The 2 groups that had come today could speak Italian. If Lu Shu eavesdropped on their conversation, they would definitely be speaking in Italian. The young man translated for Lu Shu. "Ha! Ha! 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 Ha!" Lu Shu laughed. "Is that so? Maybe I heard the wrong thing." Lu Shu understood that he was not suitable to plan and deal with these kinds of situations. As Lu Shu walked out to find local delights, the lady sat behind the counter. Her expression darkened. She looked at her son, then looked up. What had stirred her was not Lu Shu's words. It was not normal that 3 groups of men would stay in the same inn. Furthermore, her son was very handsome. At last, she picked up the phone. "Hello? Is this the cartel? 6 very strange people have entered my inn. I think that they may be from the Black Hand." She knew that 3 of them were not from the Black Hand. But cartel focused greatly on the Black Hand. They had been enemies for a long time. On the surface, they smiled, but behind the scenes, they tried to find chances to attack each other. Although the cartel was pastoral and hoped that metahumans would be able to use their abilities to serve the public, who did not allow artists to fight with others. The Black Hand had even come to their doorstep to fight them. They could not avoid this. When Lu Shu returned, he was stunned. The entire inn was surrounded by a group of mysterious people who he had not seen before.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things that we better.